Hello and welcome to this edition of the Warriors Stock Report. I'm Tim Bontemps, ESPN NBA senior writer in Las Vegas for the NBA Cup on Saturday morning, Pacific time. And with me, as always, Anthony Slater, ESPN NBA senior writer in the Bay Area after yet another really disheartening Warriors game. I think there's really the only way to describe it, despite the fact that there's no Draymond Green. The Warriors lose 127 to 120 on Friday night to the Minnesota Timberwolves after several days off, after a crazy Steph Curry pregame shot, after a crazy Steph Curry performance, and it was not enough to get a W. And I imagine, Slater, that after that game, it was the mood was not great at the Chase Center.
Yeah, 51 and 24 combined for Gobert and Randall.
That's a
Which,
lot. It's a lot of points and
yeah.
a lot of rebounds.
So, no Draymond, which, personal reasons, I think people can guess what those are. He'll be back in Portland Sunday, it sounds like. Maybe play, maybe not, but like, you'll see him soon. Al Horford, I saw him working out pregame, but again, another like string of games he's missing because of the sciatica. You saw him like, randomly get dropped back in the lineup briefly in Philadelphia, but once again, these are the type of matchups that they could really use Al Horford in, and he's just kind of been non-existent all season. So that's one of the problems. You face a Gobert Randall and you don't have either of those two. Quentin Post, like his defensive numbers have actually been pretty good this year, but again, in that matchup, especially, I think Gobert dunked on him twice late. He wasn't hitting threes early. He had that weird, did you see the play late where Butler drove and kind of kicked it to him for a big three and he caught it
Yes.
and
Oh, I saw it.
basically, yeah, it looked like the screen glitched for like 4 seconds before he shot. And he wasn't the issue in the game, but I guess they're depleted interior and then undersized, positionally everywhere, especially with the lineups that Steve Kerr was choosing to play against a big Minnesota team was the issue. And yes, Steph Curry gets 39, but their defense had been so good. They were up to third in the league defensively. They gave up 127. They gave up 39 in the fourth. It's just, one issue gets solved, another pops up for this team. And that's just like I guess the definition of an extremely average team, as they sit here, 13 and 13 through 26 games.
Yeah, I mean, Rudy Gobert's numbers in this game, 24 points, 11 for 13 from the field, 2 for 3 from the line, 14 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, a block, plus 8 in 35 minutes. And to your point, Quentin Post is a nice find in the second round. He's a good spacing big. He cannot stop Rudy Gobert inside. And yes, I saw the dunk late in particular when he yammed it on the entire Warriors team with about a minute to go, to give them, I think, a 5 point lead at the time. And yeah, like you can, again, like you said, there's extenuating circumstances obviously here on a variety of levels, but at the end of the day, the Wolves have been a pretty mediocre team all season, and Anthony Edwards was not playing. Like, you can't lose this game at home with Steph going for 39. Again, like several
After
of these
4 days off, by the way.
after 4 days off. And again, to go back to the Milwaukee game, to the Indiana game, to, there have been several situations this season when the Warriors had games that they should have won and did not win them. And like you said, we're now looking at a team that is decidedly average. They are 13 and 13 through essentially a third of the season. And it certainly does not look like they are going to be able to be in the kind of position that they need to be, to have a chance to make the kind of run they want to make. And to your point, even about Al Horford, right? Like, we're seeing LeBron James go through the exact same issue, um, as far as having, a bad back as one of the oldest players in the league. LeBron is the oldest, I think. With Chris Paul out of the picture, I believe Al Horford is the second oldest player in the league now. And yeah, for as good a shape as Al Horford is in, a borderline 40-year-old guy dealing with sciatica in his back is a real problem, particularly when he was expected to have a very significant role in the team when it got down to the important parts of the season. And we'll see, we'll see where he's at in a few months, but it's not that's not an encouraging start. And like we talked about last time we were on here, the Warriors are now 4 losses behind Minnesota, and they're 6 losses behind the Lakers and the Spurs for fourth and fifth. Now, Spurs might be 5 in a few hours if they do what we expect and lose to the Thunder. But that being said, you're still talking about a sizable gap already, and as the games start to pile back up after this little mini cup break, it's hard to see the Warriors suddenly looking dramatically better with all the issues that have cropped up.
Yeah, I mean they're about to play 2 road games, Portland, Phoenix, but then after that 13 of 17 are at home. The back-to-backs are not um two. I think before February there's like 3 more back-to-backs, and like they're Brooklyn, Charlotte is one of them, and there's like a home one that's like Thunder on the front side, but then Jazz. So like it actually is like really from now until they head out to Dallas on like January 21st, it's like probably you would say they're best month and a half of a schedule for the whole season. So like there is a chance here, but part of that chance was Minnesota last night. No Anthony Edwards, 4 days off. Team that is sixth, you have a target of the sixth seed. I think the actual sixth seed. I think is an appealing place to be because you're avoiding the Thunder theoretically till the West Finals. Like you're on the other side of the bracket of the Thunder.
Yep.
You're in the playoffs, and look, you can't just avoid everybody, right? Maybe you get a Houston, whatever. I think like a Houston Thunder 3-6 or Houston Warriors 3-6 would be relatively appealing. And again, it's too early to talk about this stuff, but you know, like last night is such a play-in type loss for them. It's the
Mm-hmm.
type of loss you leave the arena like, oh yeah, this probably is just a play-in team because you just win that game if you're going to be a top 6 seed,
Yep.
especially because that is the 6th seed and they were wounded coming in and you just let them win.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing we keep talking about, right? Like these are the games that you can't let slip away. Um, if you want to be a team that is in the top six, even in the West, where there's maybe only 7 teams worthy of being in the top six. I want to get to Steph in a second as the one true stock up moment of this game, both him coming back and the way he played. But since you highlighted the stretch of the schedule, this 19 games essentially before they go to Dallas on January 22nd. Um, so it's 19 games in about 39 days. And this is the run of teams that they have, to your point. At Portland and Phoenix, then home for Phoenix, home for Orlando and Dallas. They go on this East Coast trip to Toronto, Brooklyn, and Charlotte. They're home for the Thunder and the Jazz, like you said, second night of a back-to-back there. At the Clippers, home for the Bucks, Kings, Hawks, Blazers, Knicks, Hornets, Heat, Raptors. That is a lot of losing teams. That's a lot of home games. Like
A lot of
that,
off days too.
a lot of off days. Like that stretch of the season, that 19 games. The Warriors, they're not going to be favored to beat the Thunder. They're not going to be favored. I would say they're probably not favored to beat Orlando. They're not going to be favored to beat the Knicks. I would say outside of that, you can make a realistic argument, and they're probably not favored to win in Toronto.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you could make a realistic argument they're favored to win the other 15 games. If you want to split the Suns games, okay, 14 games. So to me, if this team wants to have a chance to get where they want to go, like they've probably got to go at least 13-6 in those games, 14-5 in those games. Like they've probably got to clean up in that stretch and get 7, 8, 9 games over 500 going into the rest of the schedule, which, as you know, once we get into mid to late January, the national TV games really kick in. The Warriors, like the Thunder, like the other top teams, their schedule gets harder. They play a lot more high level games, and they're going to pick up losses later, almost certainly. Um, Now, are they going to be able to go 13-6 and 14-5 against that stretch of the schedule? I would say no, based off
The
the
other
fact that
thing,
they've kicked away all these other games. But
yeah,
it's probably what they need to do. I
the
don't know
other
what you
part
think.
of this schedule, this pocket of the schedule that should tell them how, I guess realistic their hopes are or not is what does it lead into? What's late January? That's post eligibility trade date for Jonathan Kuminga, and then it's like the 2 week lead up to the trade deadline. That should inform what you need, what you should go after. Should you put chips in? Should you not?
100%.
And then, like you could decide what type of boost you need or what type of team you are. Maybe you just, I don't know if you end up punting, it would have to get pretty dark for that, but that's certainly on the table.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean if they're 22 and 23, right, at the going to Dallas, if they go 9 and 10 in this stretch, like they're going to be a play-in team. They might be at the bottom of the play-in, right? If they go, let's say they go 14 and 5 and they're 27 and 18, the whole mood feels different, right? And then they're going to be probably in the top 6 and like you
and
said,
probably pushing a chip in.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They're gonna there's gonna be interest in trying to get better and being aggressive and looking at their at. So yeah, this to your point for where this sits for where this falls in the schedule between the way the team has played through the first third of the season and what it could mean for the trade deadline. Um, I certainly think that night these 19 games are probably gonna, and especially that 17 game homestand, probably gonna define how their season goes, for better or worse. Um, we obviously need to talk about Kuminga in a minute, but Steph did come back from the quad injury. He had 39 points. He was awesome. Uh, Carried these guys back in the second half. Looked like for a second when they got ahead late in the fourth quarter, they were going to steal, win, eventually faded away. What did you think of the way he played and for everything we're talking about for this next 5, 6 weeks? How encouraging was his performance from a Warriors perspective?
Well, it felt like the Celebrini planned was working to perfection, which was, there was some thought internally that maybe he could get back by maybe that Chicago game. Like if they sent him out on the road and then that, you had the Cleveland, Chicago back to back. Oh, which side of that back to back could he maybe get back for? But then it was like, let's take 2 steps back here, leave him in the Bay Area, let him get treatment, be around family. I mean, like the consistency of being at home and not being,
Sure.
on the grind of a 3 and 4 night East Coast, very cold road trip, by the way, let me say, because it was. Um, but then the 4 days off, right? And they set him up for that Wednesday night scrimmage, which apparently he came out looked really fresh in, and you could see it. Like that's about as lively as of legs you've seen from Steph Curry and aggressiveness. He took 28 shots in 32 minutes. That's typically like Steph's feeling good when he's getting up that type of volume. So encouraging of like just like the Steph Curry side. Like there's a chance here, and this is what they haven't had this season. And if you even look back to last season, the Jimmy Butler trade, like what did that coincide with? One of those Steph 3 week surges where it was
Yep.
like 39, 36, 42, 51 in Orlando. Like he hasn't had one of those this season. He's had a couple spectacular games, but he's just the illness set him back, the quad injury, just some bad performances like mixed in. If he could just during this stretch that we just talked about, this 19 game stretch, if he can just lift them up, that's often the answer to like the Warriors' problems. And then when he does that, we start talking about some of the other stuff around the team. Like it's probably more impactful on winning than it actually is. When the reality is like, oh, Steph is just like averaging 37 on 50% from three over a 3 week period. So if you are coming off stock up from last night, it's just like he looks really good and fresh. And maybe that 2 weeks off was really good for him because 39 points in 32 minutes. And he looks ready to, go into Portland tomorrow night and throw up another 28 shots probably.
Yeah, and that's what they're going to need, right? Like they're going to need Steph to really have if they're going to have the kind of run we're talking about. Steph's got to go on a heater, which he's capable of going on a heater for a month, but we'll see if he's able to do that. Now, you mentioned the game, that road trip. We obviously the last time we talked was after the Philly game, and it was a very eventful weekend for the Warriors. They go to Cleveland, and with half their team sitting out, beat the Cavs in Cleveland. Tremendous win there. Then they go to Chicago the next day and beat the Bulls, who've been a train wreck for weeks. So they're feeling good coming off of that. You have the Pat Spencer show ramped up to the 11th
10.
degree.
Yeah,
Uh,
10, 11. He did a media blitz. He had a NBA Today like sit down whole
Uh,
segment.
so then he's in the starting lineup for last night's game, and it should be said had the worst plus minus in the game, minus 15 in 28 minutes. And Steve Kerr is once again answering questions about Jonathan Kuminga not only not being in the starting lineup like he was allegedly in the starting lineup permanently a couple months ago, but not playing at all now. So uh, after last night's game, do we think the Pat Spencer experience is going to continue for a while? And secondarily, is Kuminga just going to be chilling now for a while?
On the Spencer front, I mean, I think you saw last he tried him with Steph, which they hadn't really ever done. And you saw the defensive problems that creates. Because Spencer hit a couple spot up threes. I didn't think he had a poor game. Honestly, like Pajemski's 19 minutes were probably in ways a little bit more destructive.
Yes,
Uh,
he had the second worst plus minus on the team, minus 11, 23 minutes, 1 for 4, 2 points.
yeah, he had a
Uh,
couple bad moments early in the fourth. They entered the fourth up three, and then suddenly we're like down 10.
yeah,
And Pajemski had a couple bad moments within there, but with Spencer, yeah, I think Steve will give him a little bit of a runway of playing time, but I don't know that he can like tie him to Steph quite like he tried last night. And then that's like the overall issue with what's going on once again, which has been the story of the last few seasons, really. It's just like the constant experimentation because Steve would say, hey, there's no separation from, roster spot 4 to 14 essentially at this point. He just like it's a bunch of solid, capable rotation players with flaws and strengths that fit into various lineups but don't fit into other lineups. But like there's players seek consistency. We've talked about it, and there just it hasn't been. I mean, you were looking last night. It wasn't just Jonathan Kuminga who got a DMP. Seth Curry and Will Richard got a DMP. Remember, Will Richard was starting a
that's
couple
right.
weeks ago. Remember,
That's right.
Moses Moody had his moment. He hit 7 threes against the Pelicans in New Orleans, and Steve's talking about it's going to be tough to take him out of the starting line. He's somewhat buried now. He's playing, but he's probably you would consider like ninth man last night. So it's kind of do you blame the roster or do you blame the coaching strategy?
Or
I
both.
think, yeah, there's fair arguments for both. But we can specifically get into the Kuminga situation because of everything that has led up to it and everything that is ahead, which is like the trade piece of it. But it's kind of the whole roster where you're looking like everybody has had their moment where you thought, oh man, they're like a 30-minute per night guy now, and then 2 weeks later they're DMP in, and it's just like so with Kuminga to your question, it's like he had a weird week, obviously, like the DMPs, and then he gets back, and him and Steve had this meeting prior to the Wednesday practice, and then apparently he came out and he was flying around in practice Wednesday, Thursday, and you thought, hey, maybe they'd try him against Minnesota because he was good against the Timberwolves in the series. Didn't happen. DMP, they felt small out there. Who knows? Whatever. But it's like, I can't predict when you'll see him again, but if you were to ask me, will you see him again soon? Probably because this rotation just flips on its head every week.
Yeah, I think that's that is I think the only way to really look at it, right? Is that like we have said on all this stuff from the beginning, it's everybody has been to blame from Jump Street, and I would say everybody is to blame for the current situation the Warriors are in across the board. Steve has always been someone who has kind of done the strength and numbers things and tinkered around and moved guys in and out of the lineup. I mean, famously played Anderson Varejao in the fourth quarter of Game 7 of the 2016 Finals, right? Like this is always who he's been. But to your point, like there are a lot of similar okay players on this team from a 4 to 14 standpoint, and Steve might be Steve's an all-time great coach. He might be one of the worst coaches to have in that specific situation where he can realistically pick from 9 or 10 different guys. And to your point, is gonna from night to night pick different guys of the 9 to 10 guys. And it doesn't matter if you're 22-5, but it's the kind of thing that is going to matter if you're 13-13 and you're losing disappointing games, and it becomes a thing where people start to go, well, why is Steve doing this, or why is Steve doing that, or why is this guy playing, or why is that guy not playing? Because um, there's not really a good answer either way, like for any of them, because you can make a pro or con argument that's pretty rational for just about all these guys, and that to your point, has led to a lot of inconsistency in rotations and playing time and minutes. And uh, I think it's,
Well, and
it's led to a lot of frustration at different points.
when they lose, he tends to experiment more, right? He searches and he'll admit that. And then so it's like almost it snowballs, right?
Yes.
Because that leads to more questions, but it also leads to more experimentation. So yeah, it's not going terrific.
No, no, it's not. Um, you know,
Melton's looked pretty good though. That
that
he's
was
had
what I
three,
was that was what I was
yeah.
about to ask you. So D'Anthony Melton played 20 minutes last night. He came back. Obviously, we talked about it last week. Sat out the Chicago game, right? Played against Cleveland and sat against Chicago, right?
Uh
Um,
sat against Cleveland, played against
Played in
Chicago.
Chicago, right?
Yeah.
That's right. I messed that up. But yeah, like early on, like has looked pretty good. Has immediately been playing around 20 minutes a night. Um, we have talked a lot about how talented a player he is and how helpful he can be to this team. Seems like, again, nobody should be expected to play 35 minutes a game, but it seems like, at least for the first week, that's been certainly a stock up to have him back in the lineup and playing sort of the way everybody expected Melton to play when they signed him once he was back from his knee injury.
Obvious starting two guard when he can play the type of minutes that would allow that. But again,
Well, let
that's
me ask you a question about that, not to
yeah.
jump in, but like I just said, are we sure that's the case, or is he just going to be a 20-minute a game player? Because I
Yeah, they're
tend
they're
to.
they're capping him at 20. I mean, Kerr said it last night that Celebrini is only allowing him to play 20, and he's like, I will play him 20. Like that's
What I
how I
mean
feel
is,
about it.
but that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
Anthony's had a ton of injuries. Like, is it realistic to think he's going to be playing
Well,
starter
that
minutes at some point? Is that the plan? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is that the hopeful plan, or is the
uh,
cap going to be
I
at like
asked him
24 minutes?
I asked him about back to backs, and he said, "Look, for right now, he's going to play one side of back to backs, but this isn't an Al Horford situation where that's the permanent plan. There is a ramp up idea, but they should be careful. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it plenty, so we don't need to get too deep into it. So, I mean, to answer your question, yes, in their ideal mind, March, April, May, whatever, however long, like theoretically, D'Anthony Melton should be able to play 31 minutes on any given night.
So
And
the
if they
hope
had a
is he
back,
can get to a place where he is the starting shooting guard to be able to handle the load of a starting
yes,
shooting guard from a minute standpoint.
that is their desire and their plan. But I think it's fair to be like, okay,
Right.
how realistic.
Whether that happens or not is another thing entirely. But I do think I didn't know, I didn't know what the plan was, and I do think it's important to know that because yeah, like look, like I mean, you've been on this since the moment they were going to bring him back. Like he is the ideal player to put in the starting lineup on this team next to Steph Curry. Terrific on ball defender, gets out in transition, good spot up 3-point shooter, like good connector, like exactly the guy that you want to have between Steph and Jimmy on the wing. So yeah, like that would be great. I am a little skeptical he's ever going to be able to get to the point where he can handle that kind of minutes load, but I hope so because he's a great dude who's had to deal with a bunch of brutal injuries, and he is like I said, he's a perfect fit. You even see it in this game. I mean, he's +4 in 20 minutes, and the stat line isn't popping off the charts, but he just does a lot of stuff that contributes to winning basketball. And if he's starting last night instead of Pat Spencer, like the Warriors are probably in a position to win this game. But, for a variety of reasons, that's not something that's realistic now. And we'll see if it's realistic down the road. We've talked a bunch about the upcoming schedule, so we don't really need to get into that. Um, what else stands out to you about where this team sits after this mini break and as they get ready for this post cup stretch of the schedule coming up?
Yeah, I just how real is their defense going to be? It's been really good in a lot of ways over the last month. Like I said, it's gotten up to third. Part of that is because the league defensive numbers are just like down because the offensive numbers are so up. But
Yep.
4 out of their last 5 scored below 100 opponents prior to the 127. So can they sustain as like a top 5 type defense in the league while just basically trying to use Steph Curry to be like at least an average offense? That'll be the formula. But will there be any type of rotation consistency within this stretch to kind of allow for that and health? And I said Al Horford was on the court last night getting a workout in. Like, can they get Al Horford on the floor for 5 straight games, especially without back-to-backs? Like, that's to me a big thing, because the theory of the summer was like that was their big signing, and it just hasn't resulted in anything.
Yeah, I mean, so far he's been essentially a zero, right? I mean, I'm looking up his numbers quick. Yeah, I mean, he's played in 13 games.
Low
He's
minutes.
low minutes. He's not hitting shots. Um, shooting basically only shooting threes, which is what he was going to do anyway. But yeah, like the theory of him was that he was going to be, a guy who would be an impactful, at least an impactful super sub. And so far, he's really not been impactful at all. And yeah, like this upcoming stretch would be a pretty important time to have as many of these guys available as possible. Because again, I hadn't really thought about it with January 15th, and I didn't know the stretch of the schedule was coming up till you laid it out. But yeah, like those 17 home games going into, from now until, um, until the 19th, I think it's the 19th of
20.
January.
I
No, the
know I'm flying to
20th.
Dallas
Yeah,
on
the
January
back to back
20th.
on the 19th and 20th against Miami, Toronto. Right. You know when your flight is. That's what matters. So the morning of January 21st, where the Warriors sit in the standings, uh, I would guess somewhere between 22 and 27 wins is probably going to tell a lot about where their season goes. And the closer it is to 27, the more excited I think a Warriors fan can be, and the more likely it is that this team, I shouldn't say more likely it's they're aggressive, because they have a tendency to be aggressive regardless, but it's more likely that you can look at it and, like you said, realistically say, hey, if they're sitting there at 6 in mid-April and they're on the opposite side of the bracket from the Thunder, if they go in the playoffs healthy, they can realistically look at it and think they're going to be a live threat to win 2 rounds and have a chance to take on, most likely, the this juggernaut Thunder team. If they're 22 and 23 or 23 and 22 or something like that, or God forbid for their standpoint worse than that, they're not going to be out of the top. They're not going to be in the top 6. They're going to be in the play-in, and I think it brings a lot of questions about what they should do before the trade deadline into focus.
Let's get you over to what it's at T-Mobile, I assume tonight. You got a Magic Knicks, Thunder
Yeah, man,
Spurs. That's
we got NBA Cup. We got thrilling NBA Cup action. We got Victor
it's good
Wembanyama.
semifinals. Good
Good
semi.
semifinals. Knicks Magic has become a little bit of a juicy rivalry. In the East, the Magic have had the Knicks number for most of the last couple of years. The Knicks beat them on Sunday at the Garden. Franz Wagner unfortunately had a high ankle sprain in that game. Luckily, it was not worse. It looked a lot worse than that at the time. So we'll see what happens there. And then, yeah, in the nightcap, Victor Wembanyama is back tonight playing. Guessing he's going to play 20 to 25 minutes, but he's back on the court against this Thunder team that, actually, we should talk about this before we go. We both spent a lot of time around the 73 win Golden State Warriors. You were covering the Thunder at the time. We both obviously covered that all-time classic 7-game series in the West Finals between those two teams. You then came to the Bay, as did I, after that when Kevin Durant showed up. And you were around the Thunder a lot. So as of right now, on Saturday, December 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, how realistic do you think it is that the Thunder could win 74 games?
More realistic than I've thought a team would, threaten for a while. They have the same record the Warriors did at the time, right? The Warriors started 24-0, lost. So I believe they got up to 29-1.
They did.
And but there's a lot to it, and I think the fact that the Thunder's already dealt with so many injuries and haven't overtaxed their guys, like, it shows that there's like a sustainability through the inevitable absences that are to come this season, because they've already done this with absences, but also just like the tiring nature of the season. Like, I'm naturally skeptical of it, and I can There's some of the record that Warriors team have. Like if you go back, remember when Steph hits the half court shot, the famous one in Oklahoma City? I think they were like 43-4 at that time. At one point, they were like 55-5. Like what the Thunder just did, they have to kind of do like four more times, and that's really hard. And if I would say, hey, like you're one, like 5 games Shea absence away from losing two or three times, and then you're like completely off pace. But at the same time, Shea missed a game the other day and they beat the Jazz by 30. So they're probably still like a high level, I don't know, a 58 win team if Shea was just like not on the team. So it's like it is realistic, which is crazy to say, but also like it's easier said than done when you're sitting at 24-1. Like again, you got to stack up another month of this and another month of this. I'm curious if they can get 16 closer to 30. That's the other one. Oh, I'm talking like straight win streak.
Yes, the 33-game win streak for the LA Lakers back in '71. The Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor Lakers. That has been one of the records that we were not sure would ever be broken in sports. I mean, nobody thought that 72 wins would get broken either, and we saw that. So, yeah, I mean, the thing that's just crazy to your point about this Thunder team is that, last year they don't have, last year Isaiah Hartenstein played 57 games and Chet Holmgren played 32, right? And Jalen Williams played 69 games. Not like he played 78. And they won 68 games, right?
Which,
So,
by the way, I remember I went down the stretch and covered they blew out the Pacers and blew out the Bulls in like late March. And
yes.
they were on like a 10, 11 game win streak at the time. And like 70 was reachable. And then they throttled back. They mass rested like 2 or 3 games down the stretch. They lost like 2 or 3 in the last like 5 or so. And I ended up with what, 68?
Yeah.
And if they wanted 70 last year, I believe they would have gotten 70. So to your point, with a bunch of injuries.
Yeah, so I just really hope, I've said this a couple times, I just really hope they really try to go after it. Like they have a chance to be the greatest team of all time, and it's not really a hyperbolic statement. They could have the most regular season wins. They currently have a net rating of plus 17. The 96 Bulls had a net rating of plus 13 and a half. Like they're 4.5 points per 100 better than they were last year. Their defense is the best defense any team in the NBA has had in 6 years. The gap between them and second place, which was the Warriors before last night's game, at least as of yesterday, the gap between them and the Warriors in second place was the same gap as between the Warriors and the Charlotte Hornets in 24th place in that metric. Yeah, they're now 7.7 points better than the Rockets, I should say, who are in second. And the gap from there is now back to, it's the same gap as from the Rockets in second as is to the Clippers in 25th. Like, they're just doing insane things. And that's with Hartenstein missing time again, Holmgren missing time again, Jalen Williams missing the first month of the season and basically having to relearn how to shoot the ball since he's come back from this wrist injury. So, I just really hope they chase after it because I think it would be a really big thing for the league if they make a run at 73 and, have a chance to do that, defend their title, be the first team to do that in over a decade and become like this potential historic dynastic team. Like for all the talk about parity, I think parity is good. Having a big bad team to chase down has typically always been a good thing for the NBA. And it would be nice if the Thunder really lean into that.
All right, well, let's get you out to that arena for a chase at a 17th straight win.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Appreciate it. We'll be back again probably next Friday after this, after the road game in Phoenix. We'll see how that goes. See if the Warriors can get another couple W's between now and then. But Slater, safe travels to Portland, assuming you're going. And have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.
All right, enjoy Vegas.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Think I'm James Harden where I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA on the ESPN tour.